taboo.
Hi everyone, welcome to Revenue Hacks, the industry game changer weekly live show from Rise Up. Every Wednesday we get together to discuss key points that the industry is facing, as well as tackle some of the key issues that hospitality unfortunately goes through on a day-to-day basis. Today, I'm here, Custodio Barrera, to try and assist with our key hosts, Sheila and Thibaut, on one of the key topics that our industry has recently, unfortunately, again, gone through at the forefront of facing. We're talking about expenditure. We're talking about controlling those expenditures to improve revenue. If I could ask our host to introduce himself, Sheila, please.
Hi all, thank you for having me. I am Sheila Krishnan, Commercial Director at Hamilton Hotel Partners, overseeing the UK and Scandinavia portfolio of hotel. Hamilton Hotel Partners is an hotel advisory company offering hotel asset management, hotel management and development services across EMEA.
Welcome, Sheila. Good to see you again after all of the time we spent together as colleagues in the past. Thibaut, please.
Hi guys, so my name is Thibaut. I'm the founder and managing director of Qatar Consulting. We're a company of outsourced revenue management. We're looking after hotels in Europe, and as well the COO of Vertel Asset Management, which is a brand new company that we just launched. So yeah, big news, and I'm quite sure I will explain on this one on the next few episodes. But yeah, glad to be back.
Well, first of all, many congratulations. Congratulations on also your feat of running the Vienna Marathon recently. So
yeah, thank you.
I mean, I'm speechless at all of that. I have to admit, I think all of that is above human nowadays.
It's not.
Very much. So we've been talking about hospitality now every week for the last 3 years, as we've recently celebrated. But recently, with everything that the world has gone through, every news channel, everything talks about lack of staff, hospitality, resources. But of course, at the moment, supply chain. How can we help? How can we assist on those expenditures? How can we control that? Can we also assist each other's businesses? Hospitality is a very small world. We look at the cost, unfortunately, is going out the window. Forget about what you've contracted with your suppliers, with your key suppliers. What is there more so than ever right now that the industry need to do? The steps that need to be taken. We know, myself, let's be honest, we all work in different companies. We're here always as a group of colleagues, peers, but within most street systems, we've seen what our clients, our prospects are asking from systems like ours. But from your own experience, and Thibaut, I'm going to pick on you first, if I may, because especially if you're a new adventure, I'm sure that was at the forefront of your questions is, how are we going to deal with the new suppliers and what are we doing? As head of procurement and so forth, what really have you faced recently? And if you could really describe that, I think that'd be a great starting point for us for today.
Yeah, I mean, like it's a very interesting topic and trend as what we are seeing currently, because it's true, inflation is impacting negatively our bottom line currently. Plus the price of pretty much everything is on the roof. So it's very important to plan accordingly in advance. So for example, like if you are expecting and if you do some kind of forecasting on your supplier, to maybe bulk buy in advance to make sure you get a cheap rate as far in advance, to make sure you avoid this kind of jump, could be a good one. But for me, going back to the revenue management perspective, I will say like start having your data. So the first step that we have done on the hotels was to capture as much data as we can as granular as possible, understand more the data, start to do some forecasting on top line. And once our top line was actually going up or down, that's when we look at, okay, our revenue is not going to hit the target. However, we can maybe control our expenses and to ensure our bottom line GOP percentage and so on. So we say like, look first at collecting the right data, go as granular as possible to understand your data, and based on those one and your projection, then you can adjust and take some strategic decision.
Sure. Sheila, obviously your expertise goes back many years within revenue, reservations and so forth, but now as within your current role, how are you finding that properties are dealing with their suppliers? And we're talking not just on the room and OTA side, but we're talking the in-depth suppliers, or let's say
make
sure that the kitchens are well stocked up and so forth, just as a basic example.
Yeah, and I think to add to Thibaut's point there, planning and looking at the financial numbers is the data. So looking at the P&L each end of the month, yes, we're looking at the top line revenue, but let's look at the line item for each cost as well. You look at the housekeeping. Why is the linen cost is so expensive? Is there something we can do about this? Is there a different supplier or different provider? And looking at the commission rate, why is it increasing each month? How can we then turn around into the direct channel? And I think the biggest thing now we're looking at, when you look at the branded hotels, they have the supply management, but for an independent hotel, it's quite challenging. So a lot of work has to be done. First of all, it's collecting information across all of these hotels. And we as a management company, what we're trying to do is, okay, where can we get the best negotiation from? So and that's looking at the information, from a supplier perspective, from a coffee perspective, who are the suppliers out there? What is the product that they're offering? How can they meet the need of our hotels? What the cost would be, and how would that impact from a profitability perspective? So it's kind of, first of all, it's collecting the data, and what's lacking here, and I think this, we go way back in revenue hacks, is the lack of systems, procurement systems, which can give you the analysis on what you're spending on and where you're not spending, or how can we spend the money better. And I'm sure you have so much to add to this, Custodio, than me and Thibaut.
You did it on purpose, Sheila, yeah? You're sponsored by Custodio. Well done.
Well, that was it. I've not met Sheila for 20 years after we started working together. Let's do a revenue hacks team call, and then that way I can showcase. But no, I totally agree with you, and I think you're right. So we are seeing within Burr Street that as much as the procurement side, the inventory side, which are the core kind of the heart of the product, suddenly clients are demanding things like the e-sourcing. Let's get the RFPs out. Let's start really working with our suppliers, and negotiation process with suppliers is key. Working with the right GPOs, the right suppliers. What type of suppliers are we going to need in? Also, you've got to think about your local suppliers. You and I, Sheila, many moons ago, we worked for a private group in London who have very individual suppliers. Then we've worked at Hilton, which has the GPO on the other side that really kind of gives them everything to their marketplace. So those relationships for me and what I'm seeing at the moment have become critical. Before was, okay, we go out, 3 suppliers, whoever gives us the cheapest quote, we go with them. No longer that. It's now there is a relationship, not only property and client, guest, but property and their suppliers, to ensure that costs are kept to a minimal. At the same time, it's also ensuring the staff follow those procedures. It's great to get this technology in. It's great to get Burr Street systems in, whatever it may be. But at the same time is, how can we ensure that our staff really uses the system? Like everything else, you have the sales team negotiating heavily room night contracts. Can we get the bookers to adhere to those room nights and to those properties? You're now asking your chef, your head of departments, your head housekeeper to say, please order from these guys. We've got negotiated rates, we've got deals, we've got contra deals in place. We need to order this much quantity to meet our negotiated levels for next year, and so on. So that's one of the things that it's key. The other key is the inventory. It's not just ordering for the sake of ordering. I mean, I think we opened between us 3 hotels, Sheila, back in the day, and it was like, right, we just ordered these number of things and that's it. No more. You have to know your par levels. You have to do your inventory controls and really do your count management as accurate as it can be. An Excel spreadsheet, a piece of paper is no longer acceptable. It's a live tool to give people like Thibaut, now that on his new role, the live data that he needs. But it's true, without that data, you can't make the decisions, Thibaut, to, let's say, in my opinion. But for me, there's one thing.
I agree and disagree actually on this one. I agree and disagree.
Okay, no.
That's welcome back, Thibaut. The thing is, like, I also realize that many hotels are not even doing some inventory control. So it's just like going back to your stock and saying like, how many coffee can I have? 1, 2. Okay, I have my pen and paper. 1, 2. Just this kind of basic process. I guarantee you that most hotels don't do it. So if you start anywhere to control your expenses, to control your procurement and so on, start by doing a freaking inventory of your cost. Be it on a pen and paper, And if you have the chance and luxury to go with a system, yes, 1%. I fully agree that would be the next step of optimization. But start by doing an inventory control. I think that would be super important.
No, I agree with you, and that's what I was going to see. I take a different route. I go for a system because if we only fix half of the step, then when will the step get fixed? So you're always going to trip up in that top step. For me, the way I look at it from my operational days is the fact at the moment, what we have in our industry is that lack of vision document process. Suppliers can come into the industry. We all work with suppliers, you guys yourselves, we're all three of us are suppliers to the industry to a certain extent, is we should be also educating our new clients, because the new hospitality employee needs that level of education that we have from our hospitality days. And then the foundations that you mentioned, Thibault, I agree with you. You need to get those rights first. Address what's there. Consult on what's there with the client. Put the SOPs with the client. Become part of a partnership. The same way we are here with Revenue Hacks. The same way that what you, Rita, and others did last week in Milan, where you attended the event and you really showcased that. And I know Hamilton Partners does that as well quite well, is create that partnership. You've got owners, you've got management. Everyone needs to work together on this. And I agree. If you don't have foundations, if you don't know what you have, what you're going to order, let's be honest, as basic as that, to be fair. So tell me one thing, Sheila, you've obviously went from property level to now Hamilton Hotel Partners, and then you're still in and out of properties, and obviously exciting life, working from home with Coco, which we'll explain to our listeners in a moment, our new guest speaker for future events.
She'll be barking, woofing.
There you go. That's what we want. What are your properties, the properties you work with day in, day out? What's their biggest struggles and difficulties at the moment that they're facing when it comes to expenditures and control?
I think so. Let's put it this way, right? The demand is still unpredictable. So that means occupancy levels, who's coming in and everything, which means there needs to be a right balance on the stuff that the amenities that we are ordering for our rooms. Say, for example, if there's only one sleeper in the room, do you put in a product for 2 person or 1 person? And this is where the inventory piece comes in. So as much as we are forecasting occupancy or the footfall into the hotel, we need to also forecast the cost that's coming through. Because if that doesn't go hand in hand, you could be having high demand and low demand and overspend on the cost, thinking that we expect this many people coming into the restaurant, and you overstock up, and then at some point there's an expiration to manage as well. Similarly, products in, say for example, in the bathroom, or these products, you can't reuse them unless you are using like a shared. Again, every hotel has different level of service levels where you have to provide individual products versus like a sharing product, where for example, like a small bottle of lotion versus the large sharer bottle. So again, all of these needs to be managed accordingly, because times are difficult. Back in 2020, when the pandemic was there, we said, okay, how are we going to manage this? Creating demand, managing costs. It's all about managing costs at the end of the day, because the demand is not there. There's still lots of going on, political unrest, election, COVID is still floating around. We don't know what's happening at the moment. Yes, business are back to normal, but it's not back to where it was. So as much as we are trying to generate the demand, we have to manage costs. That is where it's crucial. Remember, utilities costs as well went like rocket high with the gas and everything. So you have to be mindful and manage each cost item line by line, focusing anywhere that we could save. How can we save? Is your food menu giving the GOP, I mean the GP that's needed for your hotel? Are you priced or correctly? Are you overpriced or underpriced? Are you generating demand for that menu? So all of this has kind of like a domino effect. So it's not about just now looking at the rooms. Are we filling in the hotel? Are we filling in the restaurant covers? Are we filling in the number of the leisure membership? Are we getting enough people? Are we getting enough golfers to come and play golf? Because everything has a cost of maintenance on top of that.
No, I agree with you. As I mentioned, obviously I'm in Dubai attending the Arabia travel market at the moment, and one of our clients is literally wanting to fine tune how many slices of tomato per burger that he will be serving.
Yeah.
Just to that fine, precise detail. Again, obviously, we can go to nutrients, allergens, and everything else that a recipe management tool should offer. But he literally is using the system that we're providing with at the moment to showcase, right, tomatoes are going to go up this week, then I'm going to take a slice here and only put 2 slices. But for me, I think one of the things, and I'm quite a strong advocate, is that when it comes to multi-property, and Thibault, you deal with this more than I do, of course, and Sheila does maybe to a certain extent, how important it is for a group that has more than one, forget about 15, 16, the thousands of this world, to have one system where they can view that live data. You mentioned on data, and that's something that I really want to touch base on, because one of the things that has been key for most suppliers is say, we've got this data, that data, but too much data might also be an issue, but too little is definitely a bigger issue, of course. At least with too much, you can pick what you want. From your point of view, you obviously more international than us. We're based in our little island in the UK and so forth. But how are you seeing things change across Europe? Because you operate in a very wonderful industry, in a very unique market as well, with the properties at the moment.
Yeah, I think again it's very important to use the right tool that you have available on the market to increase market share and drive the right decisions. Now, as you correctly said, it's not up for anything, a PMS, or RMS, or anything. You have to use the right tool to make sure it makes your life easier and not reinforce or make your life much more difficult, or a system that needs high maintenance that will spend more time maintaining than actually taking the right decision on. Okay, so I think that's number one when you choose the right system of procurement. Now you mentioned something which is very interesting about the multiple properties. You should definitely leverage this kind of portfolio to increase your negotiation power, because it helps saying like, oh, I have 50 rooms or 500 or 1,000 rooms, and then you can reduce your cost quite significantly. That would be a win-win for both the supplier and for you. Now as well, you mentioned something which I like, and we have the same situation in the ski resort, is looking after the oil consumption, like the utilities. And same as what we do with revenue forecast, we try to forecast the oil consumption and the shortage or the supply in the market for us to understand like if we need to bulk buy in advance or if we can wait a bit more, knowing that it will drop later on. So all of this, not only we're not only focusing on the top line or revenue, we start even to become kind of a trader on the stock market, or looking at the utilities like gold or oil forecast, just to make sure we hit the right sweet spot on the pricing.
So we've seen clients of ours who are tracking just food and beverage and a few things on Burr Street to start tracking services, phone bills, utility bills, and putting those costs in and adding those suppliers in. So then they can have a total cost and say, okay, this is our total expenditure. Before, okay, I track food and beverage costs on Burr Street. I'll do my inventories. It's easier. We have our scanners and so on, so we can go and do that. Clients are now adding a lot more data to really see the true cost of expenditure. And that's one of the things, that's why this topic came about, was very much on clients asking us, how are you guys doing that? What kind of analytical tools have you got available from above property, on property, departmental, chefs wanting to know quantities, par management, which even the e-sourcing element that is being done in the industry that everyone is talking about at the moment. How can we reach as many suppliers to get their feedback, as you mentioned, Sheila, who's giving the right price to the small property all the way up to the big brands? It's unbelievable to see.
And this is what I like about Hilton. I mean, I don't know, maybe other hotels are doing this as well, but I was Googling, Hilton procurement, and there was a link like, if you want to be our supplier, feel free to. And I thought that was a great idea, because sometimes, like typically if I'm looking at vendor negotiation and everything, I try to negotiate for all of our hotels to get the best cost, because look, if you give me this deal for hotel, you have 6 other hotels that I would consider. But at the same time, it's pretty much who I know that I have a relationship with, but I don't have access to a new supplier. So and I like that system, because they have a criteria to meet, and then they can be like in a database. So which means as much as I could negotiate one, I also have a backup plan to look at.
Yeah, I think that's very important. So Hilton, obviously, we work very closely with Hilton and Burr Street, as you know. We got the Hilton Supply Management, which obviously with Burr Street and the connectivity, the GPO comes in. They've obviously negotiate for everyone, and even non-Hilton properties, in fact. The great thing about it is what you have is you don't have a different choice. When you negotiate with those suppliers, again, Hilton goes quite through due diligence. You got your green responsibility at Hilton now that everyone looks up. So I think even Rita and us, we were discussing earlier on how sustainability and everything else. So when you put an e-sourcing, how can we say, you're buying coffee, as you mentioned earlier, where does it come from? Is it something that's sustainable? How is the impact on the local community and so on? So you can put a lot of questions in. And what type of bidding do you want as well? So you've got that as well. At the moment, you'll choose a supplier, but have you spoke to HSM, as they call themselves, to find out how did they source that supplier? What steps have they done? Or even if you use Burst Street, how has it reached you that? Is it be a blind envelope, closed envelope, blind bidding? We go through all the different kind of stages. Think about literally an auction at an event. It more or less takes that, but it takes your route for you to speak to that supplier. What information do you need? Legal entity, non-legal entity, different regions, different legislation. So choosing your suppliers is key. The information that you put into our tools, at the end of the day, we are IT for hospitality. And I think that's the other thing for me is we all have different experience. We all know each other from in and out of the industry, but any supplier should speak the industry language. And I think that's where Hilton has done really well. They've been, I have to admit, very influential in a lot of decisions Burst Street have taken, because the core of their procurement is it has to speak hospitality. It can't just be a generic procurement system, because you can go and buy that off the shelf. The right integrations, the right connectivity to get the right data out when it's needed. Automation of reporting has been another thing of all of these processes. When you get all your bids in, it starts from that. When you assign your supplier to what you're wanting to buy, you assign 1, 2, or 3, or just one, subject to you. Then where does it go? All through to the last detail. And even in the US already with Hilton, we're doing Burst Street Pay already. So we do the full circle with them, but they're very due diligent for us to speak hospitality, because for them, it's their team, as you know. The Hilton's program is it's possibly one of the ones that there's no hoops to jump in. You literally go step by step as such.
No, and that's true. And this is where also when with the products that we are sourcing, we want to look at the impact on in terms of the the recycling on the waste. What is the impact on the landfills? Is the product recyclable? Or kind of look at all of these aspects before just signing up a contract, because and this is one of the things that we uphold as a management company to our capital partners. These are the expectations. So sourcing a supplier is not just about getting the best price, but also what is the impact on the environment.
So one of the things
you have two elements, which are the CO2 emission, which is very important to keep in mind when sourcing or not, and your hotel in general for ESG. And then something you mentioned as well, we look at, of course, buying, but we also need to look at what is the next thing on recycling, as you just mentioned, and waste management. Because if you don't control your expenses on top line, at least control how much waste you have at the end of the day. And that's also a way to control your expenditure, because you're actually throwing out a lot of food and money on the table because you order too much and so on. So waste management is also another layer of optimization of your expenditure.
I agree. So a resort not too far away from Utibor, Stock Hotel, for example, a gentleman's great friend of mine, he tracks the freight fees, but the distance as well as the fees. The reason for that is of the impact and what kind of transport is used for the freight, from the point of sourcing to reaching literally the reseller or supplier and reaching the property, because of their corporate social responsibility. At the same time is a tracking of individual terms. And I think a comment was made a moment ago is very much that the system that they've put in place, they've actually brought in their own data overlay on top of the procurement tool they use at the moment. And it's not ours. So I'm going to say this quite in a good way is a performance way, finding out exactly the best user, who's waiting for the longest approval. Can you take approval steps away? Because if you've got the right contract and right system in place, you can deliver a quicker reply. So therefore your supplier should be able to allow more time for items to come in, and grouping of items for multi-property, because they operate obviously not one resort. So they work with suppliers that can very much group items. Think like Amazon, when you click group items for delivery for less impact. So they are already thinking like that. So it's when you see hospitality start hitting different industries as well, and the links between other industries. And I thought that was very interesting to hear that this morning.
and keep in mind the community around you. For example, like when you have a breakfast, or if you go to Lisbon, or if you go to wherever, you want to have, of course, your kind of a breakfast marker or your lunch marker where you know that you have your eggs, you have all of this, but you want a taste of the local specialties. And by sourcing locally, first of all, you make the experience much better for your customers, and then you support the community around you, because that's kind of an ecosystem of sourcing internally in your country. Yeah, I think it's a win-win-win. It's maybe a bit more expensive. That's maybe true. However, on all the benefits that you have behind are much more important. So source locally, guys. That's important.
See, I'll challenge the expense, because sometimes when you pay, by the time you pay freight and everything else,
yeah,
and if you look at a local supplier who will deliver by himself, is actually cheaper.
You're right.
What you do need is systems in place, enough. Marriott Properties do quite well where suppliers can come in, and you've got local suppliers that got access for free to the supply management portals that they use. So then that way, those suppliers also feel motivated to use tech to support them. And I think one of the things that they do is very much work closely with your suppliers, work in partnerships for the better of the industry. And I know we're reaching time at the moment, and it's been a discussion. I think we could be here for 3-4 hours, and I have a feeling it's going to be another topic for another day. And maybe we'll get Coco to make an appearance, Sheila, on that one to see how she does her supply management.
She's been very good.
She's been very good. So a last closing comment to you guys, and I'll go this from Sheila, in your role, commercial director. How do you see technology helping? And the same for Thibault, and we make that as a closing comment for today.
Immensely, because anything that could help us analyze and show, you know what, this is how much you're spending, these are the biggest costs, or that's an alternative, maybe you should do this, that would be amazing. I think that's what we need, a spend analysis. That's what we want to see. You're spending too much on linen, or you're spending too much. Yes, it's great that we are looking at the P&L and you could look at the monthly trend, but you want to be able to see more trends on a day by day or a weekly, and we are able to reflect based on that.
Excellent, thank you. Thibault, from you.
I agree as well. Like technology is very important. If you have the mean, if you can leverage technology, do it, because it will make our life much easier, and it will be much more granular. I've seen some people who have there's some people who are fully dedicated to cost control, and they have like a Excel spreadsheet, like super complicated, super heavy, which when you open it, your Excel and your computer just start to fly. So if you have something to automate with a system, the number of data that you can analyze, and more importantly, what you do with those data, spending much more time on understanding the data, much more time on taking the decision and the action based on those data, that's where you are going to drive market share, and that's where you're going to drive real optimization on your costs, not by just analyzing and explaining what's going on. That's what you do with the data and what action you take from the data, and technology will be the answer to this.
A great comment. For me, it's always been relationship with your suppliers and your partners, from food to tech to everyone. Make sure everyone works as a team, because that's what hospitality is. To both of you, it's been good to see you both. Thank you very much for today. Just like to thank everyone. Revenue Hacks is now available on all major podcast channels. You'll find this on Spotify, Apple, and of course on Google Podcasts. Do come back again. Do join our community. Do log into We Rise Up, and we hope to see you here next week again. Thank you very much to both of you, and thank you for Coco for being so good today. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Taboo.